AmchamEU and Daniel Hamilton have done an extraordinary job in really targeting the key issues for the European Union that will be necessary for it to be competitive. For Australia, sometimes people say to me, Brendan, Australia has been lucky. Well, to some extent we have been lucky, but in fact it's not luck. In our country we've had 4 decades of reform from our centre-left and our centre-right governments, and in order for us to be competitive we knew that we had to open up our markets. We need to have a flexible labour market, taxation reform, the appropriate capitalisation of our banks, deregulation of our financial sector. These and many other things that we've undertaken over 40 years have put Australia into the strong position that we're in at the moment. As we look at Europe and we draw on the work that Daniel and AmchamEU have done, we can see that what Europe actually needs in a bloc which faces collapsing age dependency ratios, where there is significant micro and macroeconomic reform to be undertaken, inflexibility still in labour markets, that it's absolutely essential that Europe will need good, strong political leadership. In the end, I think, as the Prime Minister of Luxembourg, the chairman of the Eurozone, said recently, and I quote, "We know what to do, it's just we don't know how to get re-elected once we've done it." And in the end, it's going to need strong political leadership. I think Europe knows what needs to be done. It's just how's it going to be able to do it. From Australia's perspective, we have not actively engaged the European Union historically. We've had arguments about access, particularly in agriculture. But over the last 2 to 3 years, in our opinion, Europe is becoming much more coherent. It is, as a bloc, a force increasingly to be recognised and constructively engaged throughout the world. As the EU goes into a more coherent foreign policy, as it exerts its influence in trade, particularly in multilateral and bilateral trade negotiations. From our perspective, we think that Europe, for all of the problems that it obviously does have, is going to be much more important in global affairs. From Australia's perspective, Europe needs to be looking increasingly toward the Asian region, where geopolitically and economically much more importance is going to lie for the future not only of Europe but indeed for the globe. But in terms of looking at what Europe needs to be doing, we can see that there are enormous reforms that are going to have to be undertaken if Europe wants to prosper and to grow in this century as it did perhaps in the last.